Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and we have some really interesting news to go over here today. It may be a shorter video than normal, but the news and implications that we are going to be covering here are anything but small, because yesterday we talked about how Activision is doubling down on their plan to bring back players. Well, what if I told you they are now tripling down and throwing away millions of dollars in order to do so? There's some really interesting stuff to go over here today, so let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. Here we see from the Ghost of Hope, grain of salt, so again, take this with a grain of salt. Avalon may potentially be postponed from its original late 2025 release or completely canned for Warzone because of Verdansk's return. He then clarifies, I say canned for Warzone because it's supposedly the outbreak map for Black Ops 7 Zombies from my understanding. So that right there, of course, is very interesting. Avalon was intended to be the next big Warzone map to be added to the franchise. If we look at virtually every multiplayer map within Black Ops 6, they are all set on Avalon, and there's always that idea of the chicken or the egg, like which one came first here, right? Were the maps designed for Warzone and then copied into the multiplayer, or were they made for multiplayer and then placed on the Warzone map? But regardless, Avalon was supposed to be huge. It was supposed to be the new big Warzone map, the new era for Warzone here within the Call of Duty franchise. Well, with the colossal failure that has been Black Ops 6 so far, it seems like Activision is going in a completely different direction. It almost seems like they're cutting ties and distancing themselves from Black Ops 6 and even the current Black Ops universe, because it's just like we talked about yesterday. They can't create anything new and original and have it just be good and stick, so rather they rely on old stuff, and that's exactly what they are doing, man. They invested millions of dollars into the creation of Avalon. All that time spent creating, editing, QA testing, scripting, reiterating, art design, all of it has been thrown out the window because they believe that the return of Verdansk is going to save the franchise. Activision is actually out here praying for another pandemic. Like Bobby Kotick himself, if he was still working at Activision, he would be in the lab right now coming up with some sort of disease to unleash upon the world so that Call of Duty can be back on top again, man. Like Verdansk, the reason why it was so successful was not so much because the map itself was amazing, but rather it was the time period in which the map came out, right? Like COVID and the shutdown, all that stuff happened right then and there. It was the perfect time for Warzone to launch, and that was a big reason why it was so successful. They're not going to catch lightning in a bottle twice with a re-release of a map from 2020. It just is not going to happen. The game as we know it right now is so bug-ridden, it's so infested with hackers, quality of life is in the toilet, and not to mention the matchmaking system issues. With all of that combined, no piece of content can just swoop in and save the day. Now, what would save Warzone and subsequently the Call of Duty franchise as a whole is a complete overhaul and change in design philosophy. Reinvesting in your game, believe it or not, Activision, is how you save this series. You take a short-term hit for long-term success. That is how you turn this franchise around. You upgrade the servers. I'm talking more stability and higher tick rates. You remove skill-based matchmaking. We talk about it all the time, but you remove skill-based matchmaking and you let fans have fun organically like we did from 2007 to 2018. I know they don't like hearing this because there's no way COD would ever be successful without skill-based matchmaking. Half the player base would leave. Over half the player base has left as a direct result of how terrible Black Ops 6 is, and part of that is skill-based matchmaking. You look at all those old games back in the day, all the records that were set every single year, Call of Duty being #1, like you look at all of that, it happened without skill-based matchmaking, and it can still happen again if you would grow some balls and admit the fact that your matchmaking algorithm is bad for the franchise, admit you made a mistake, and then just move on. That's all you have to do. Then on top of that, hire back all those people you laid off so the game is created by actual people instead of AI prompts. By the way, if you guys didn't hear about this, I forgot to cover it, but on Steam, they pretty much forced Activision and every other game studio who are using AI in their games to put a disclosure on the game in the Steam store, so that's pretty cool right there. Like Activision can't hide from the fact that they're using AI in their games. And then on top of that, most definitely get the anti-cheat up and running. Like I have never seen a game with hacking problems like we see here in the Call of Duty franchise. It's actually mind-blowing how it continues to be a problem year after year. Like I play a lot of Overwatch. I have never seen a single hacker or cheater in Overwatch in the, how long has it been? 6 years? 8 years? How long's that game been out? I have no idea. Like they don't have a problem with hacking or cheating whatsoever. Every now and then you'll see a clip online, but nothing compared to what you see in the Call of Duty franchise. And those things I just mentioned are all Activision has to do for Call of Duty to become a juggernaut like it used to be in the good old days. But instead of that, they have this notion that bringing back an old map is somehow going to save the game. It's literally the equivalent of them taking Black Ops 6, right, and being like, you know, the Black Ops 6 multiplayer is not doing very well right now. We hear your concerns, so ladies and gentlemen, get ready, we're bringing back firing range. Like, dude, firing range is cool, don't get me wrong, but a map is not going to fix the core problems with the Black Ops 6 multiplayer. Look at Grind. It just came out. Grind is a fantastic map. Are player count numbers going up? Absolutely not, because the core game itself is broken. And going back to what Ghost of Hope was saying right there, they're talking about Outbreak, and we're going to call it Black Ops 7, COD 2025, whatever you want to call it. What in the world would drive them to think that Outbreak would be a good idea for zombies in this year's Call of Duty game? Now, I should mention, Ghost of Hope did claim that the focus is still going to be on round-based zombies, but Outbreak on the big map is going to be there in addition to round-based. But why, right? Like, why are they possibly doing this? And I'm sure some of you will say that it's good to have variety of choice and have different things to do within the game, and normally I would agree with you, but we are talking about the Call of Duty franchise. We are talking about Activision and the Call of Duty studios. If they're putting time, energy, and resources into Outbreak zombies, then that is going to directly and negatively affect round-based zombies. I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but that is what happens here in the Call of Duty franchise. Now, whether those negative effects are the round-based maps being less polished than what fans expect, or perhaps there's going to be a longer gap in between map releases as we get updates for Outbreak, it doesn't matter. Round-based zombies will suffer as a result of Outbreak because Activision are run by a bunch of incompetent cheapskates, and I don't know why they would possibly think Outbreak would be a good move. Maybe it's their stupid way of trying to justify the millions of dollars they just wasted on Avalon. But speaking of Activision making really stupid decisions, let's go ahead and jump into the other news story for today. So here we see from Charlie Intel, Call of Duty 2025 could still release on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One per sources. Supporting last gen in 2025 is a wild decision, but the game is in development for old consoles from what we've heard. This may be a reason as to why there can't be two big maps in Warzone at the same time. So this one here is a little bit tricky, but I think we're all pretty much on the same page now at this day and age, right? Because console transitions are tough and tons of people don't immediately upgrade. Therefore, I think it's fair for studios and publishers to wait a bit before cutting off support to last gen. It just makes sense. It would be a huge kick in the teeth for those people who could not immediately afford to upgrade. But let's be real here. We're going on 5 years of the PlayStation 5 and the Series X being out, and I think for most people that is more than enough time to make a console transition. And now we're at the point where Activision and the dev studios have to actively hold the game back in order to make sure everything works properly on current hardware as well as the old hardware. The idea that they are seriously considering this for COD 2025 is nothing but bad news for the overall player base. Like, sure, there's still some people playing on the old systems, but I would wager that the number of people playing on PS4 and Xbox One pales in comparison to the number of people playing on PS5 and the Series X. By developing Call of Duty 2025 for those platforms, it holds back the overall potential of the game on current hardware and limits what the devs are actually able to do. So it seems like a no-brainer to just develop for current hardware, but this is Activision we are talking about here. The reason why they would continue to support last-gen hardware is the same reason why they monetize the game the way that they do. It's not so much about putting out a great product that people are happy with, but rather it's about letting as many people as possible get access to the in-game shop and the $30 battle passes. They're not so much concerned about the initial upfront entry fee of $70 on the PS4 and the Xbox One, but rather they want those people who are still hanging around on the old platforms to have access to the shop so they can buy their battle passes and their bundles and this, that, and the other thing. And that's honestly all it really comes down to. So if COD 2025 is released on old hardware, we can expect to see no major advancements to the series whatsoever because they are going to be held back by the old hardware. And the reason why they're doing this is because Activision is a tiny indie company that barely scrapes by, and they need to make as much money as they possibly can just to keep the lights on. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for this little news update video here today. I hope you all enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and feedback on COD 2025 apparently scrapping Avalon as a whole to bring back Outbreak zombies and triple down on Verdansk saving the franchise, as well as COD 2025 potentially being released on last-gen hardware. Let me know about that down there in the comments. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.